Good afternoon. I'm, as Tom mentioned, Janette. I'm the Assistant Director for Dispute Resolution in the RTB. And I'm going to look today and talk to you about dispute prevention and about our dispute resolution processes. I suppose just on the presentations that Keith and Owen gave, it is important to note, and it has been very legal, but we do have samples on our website, samples of notices, samples of rent reviews. They are very technical, as the boys have said. I would have always said that you have to understand and know, if you're going to read any sections of the 2004 Act, you would know Section 62, Section 34 and 35. With the 2015 Act, now there's quite a few more. So we will also be putting up on our website with the presentations here today. The Law Society have a combined 2004 and 2015 Act. So basically you will be able to go into that that piece of legislation, and you can go to Section 34 and it will show you exactly what's new in those changes that if you're serving a notice of termination. But we would be confident with the notices that we've sent, or we have up on our website, which we've also got them approved by our adjudicators and mediators and DRC members. So we're happy enough that they would pass the tests. So whether you're serving them or getting your solicitor to serve them, or the agent to serve them, or if the tenant is serving them, we have sample notices up on our website. And an important thing to remember is that 69% of notices so far have come up as invalid. And that is a huge statistic. It's shown that if 69% of them are invalid, you are starting the whole process again. You are reserving the notice and re-going through if a further dispute is submitted in. So it's so important to get the notices correct. As Keith pointed out, the major issues, and I would definitely say one of the major issues is the date of service. In the Act, it specifically states the date of service is the day after you serve it. So a lot of people get notices wrong because they're out by one day. So you just need to make sure you give the extra couple of days if needs be. But that's really not what I'm here to talk about. I'm actually here to talk about to see, well, look, if a notice is served, if a rent review is served, if you are in dispute with your tenant, how can you get around it? Or even, how does it work from the start on getting things right for both landlords and tenants? And I suppose the biggest issue that I have seen, and from my experience, from adjudicators' experience and mediators' experience, is it is down to communication. It's a lack of communication from both parties. It's a lack of understanding. It's that people get, some party states something and then there's anger, etc. So I think what we need to learn here is a bit more on communication. What I'm going to show you guys first is a video on our website, and we have where you can do specific checks on both for both landlords and tenants. We would suggest, if you're a tenant, that you check to make sure, has this landlord come before us? Can you see that he has multiple cases for deposit retention? If you're a landlord, go look at the tenant and see, has this tenant been in rent arrears? You know, is this the type of tenant that you want in your property? You know, we have a good database of cases dating back to 2004, so you can search. We have a good search facility, so I'll get Ronan to roll it on the video there.
The Residential Tenancies Board is always looking at ways to improve our website and provide methods for dispute prevention. A key part of dispute prevention is knowing who you are renting from or who you are renting to. Since the establishment of the RTB, all determination orders and reports for both adjudications and tribunals have been published on our website. The RTB has added new search functionality which allows these orders and reports to be searched using various criteria such as name, year dispute took place, and subject of dispute. To access the search tool, go to the home page, scroll down and click on the RTB Dispute Outcomes box on the right-hand side of the screen. The search tool is located at the bottom of the screen under Search Keywords. Type your search criteria into the search box, for example, name, county, dispute type, etc. There is an option to the right of the search box to select the dispute year. To further refine your search, click on the Advanced Search option. Two new search boxes appear: Additional Keywords and Exclude Keywords. The Additional Keyword search allows you to add further criteria, for example, to search for both a name and an address. The Exclude Keyword search allows you to exclude specific words from your search. When you click Search, the results are displayed as shown here and are listed under the following headings: Tribunal number, if there was an appeal; dispute number; parties to the case; subject of dispute, which is the type of dispute; order date, which is the date the determination order was issued; tribunal report, if there was an appeal; and determination order. The reports and determination orders for adjudications and tribunals are available to view, download, and print in PDF format. This user-friendly search tool displays the results in a clear and concise format. This information shows you if your prospective landlord or tenant has had a previous dispute case or cases, and shows you the issues that were being disputed.
And that search facility is also available if, for instance, you wanted to research on your case before you came, and just say your case was about a notice of termination or deposit retention. Just say you can go into the search and put in the search facility, I'm looking for deposit retention, and look for tribunal reports that would have deposit retention. So you'd see basically the previous outcomes of that if you wanted to conduct your own research, etc. That search is very useful, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Okay, so this slide then I'm looking at dispute prevention, and it's from the start. How can you prevent the dispute from arising? And I suppose the first slide or the first item would be looking at the affordability. As a rule, we know that our economists have told us, and our banks base it on the rule, that if the household costs are more than 30% of your income, then you could have an affordability issue. So I suppose from a tenant's perspective, if you are paying more than you could afford, you could find yourself running into difficulty. Also, the next thing is location. We all seen that I would have hoped that we all would have seen that video where there was this lady, she's living in a hotel, and she said she had to get 10 buses to take her child to school. So I suppose that's important too, is to factor in the location. Is it suitable for work? You know, if you have to go further down the country, is there buses available? That kind of thing. Because if you find that you are further out, if there's no buses available, etc., if you're paying more time and more costs on paying for the location, then that should be factored into your decision making on the whether you wish to rent that property. The third thing that would assist, I suppose, both landlords and tenants is looking at our rent index on our website. We produce, it's based on if there's 5 locations and within that area, a database on what is the actual rents being sold rather than the advertised rents on, we'll say, daft or myhome.ie. So we'll say for looking for a landlord and what was mentioned earlier, we have to look at market value. For a landlord or a tenant, we would encourage people to go in and check that rent index to make sure that the rent you're paying isn't above market rate, or the rent being sought isn't above market rate, etc. The background checks, like I said, it's so important. one person said, I don't really have time to go in and do searches for these tenants or landlords. And we would say for landlords, this is your most valuable asset that you have. You should have time to go in and check to make sure that we have seen cases in the PRTB where people move from place to place, where landlords do not give back deposits, and our tenants maybe do not pay the rent arrears and move from place to place and come up time and time again. So we would, it is so important to do your background checks with regards to that. The next thing, and I think it's probably the most vital thing for dispute prevention for ourselves, would be to discuss the terms of the tenancy. In that, feedback from adjudicators and mediators would have said the same. A big problem that people have is they don't know that, well, who is going to mow the lawn, or who is going, is there a dog allowed? You know, a landlord mightn't have said anything about a dog, so you've got a dog, but then there's damage to the property, etc. So it's important that you are clear from the start. How are the bills going to be broken down? Is there dogs? Can you hang pictures, redecorate? Because the law says that you can't unless you have permission of the landlord. But more than likely, the landlord will be happy to let you to do it. So it is important to just discuss the matters with them and let it be clear from the start how this relationship is going to be. The next thing I have down there is the contact details for both landlords and tenants. It's not just important for if you're taking a case, which that is an important one, but it's also important for a landlord to give their contact details to the tenant, because you don't know if at 12 o'clock in the night the pipes burst or what happens, and the tenant decides, well, look, I can't get in contact with the landlord, and has to get somebody out to fix the pipes, or even something more serious. So it is so important that both parties give over their contact details. I did have a call there about 2 weeks ago in which a person said to me, I just know he's number and his name is John. And like, that isn't really good enough. If you are getting into an issue with your landlord or with your tenant, you do need to be getting the contact details. Another thing is, for tenants especially, do not just get the contact details of agents, get the contact details of the landlords, because if you have the contact details of the agents and you wish to bring a case and you don't have the landlord's details, and God forbid the property isn't registered, it's very difficult to find out who the landlord could be. So that is so important that you ask for the contact details. Another thing is, who will the tenant be living with? I would always say it if I was giving a seminar to tenants, that it's so important that you know who you're living with. For the simple reason is, there's this thing called joint and several liability, where you could be held liable for the rents of other tenants if there's a clause in the lease for joint and several liability. So it's so important that you know who you're living with and who you're going to sign up a lease with. Okay. The next thing is, was the tenancy registered? Experience has showed us that good landlords that register will always abide by the law. It's the ones that don't register, are hiding in the system, and then they are tracked down. The good news is that you can take a case irrespective of whether the landlord is registered, but it is so important to register. As well as that, tenants now are given, and landlords are given good landlord and tenant guides when they register. So it sets out clearly your rights and obligations. One of the main things, if you're coming before us for adjudication or tribunal, is, and a lot of people don't do it, is doing an inventory and taking photographs, not just at the start, but at the end of the process. Because it's great having photographs at the end and saying, well, this is my property, this is the damage that it has gone through. But if you cannot show how it was at the start, how can you prove that it wasn't like that that at the start. It makes things harder for you to prove. So it's so important to do an inventory, set out, this is what's in the property, this is what's broken, this is what's not broken. Take pictures, videos, etc., just in the event that you end up in dispute. Another thing that we would find, and adjudicators actually specifically said it, is a lot of people don't know about whose responsibility it is to carry out repairs. Unless it's damage above normal wear and tear, it is the responsibility of the landlord to carry out the repairs. However, like I said, it's important to talk to each other. Some landlords could say, look, if there is repairs, give me a bell, somebody, you can fix it, etc. Do not go off and carry out repairs yourself without getting the permission of the landlord, as you may not get your costs back. So it's important as well for emergencies. If the tenant needs to contact the landlord to say that the property needs, that there's a burst pipe or leaking, whatever, I don't know, that that they can fix those repairs. Otherwise, you could have an asset that is damaged, but it may not be as a result of the tenant's fault. It may be as a result of you not being able to be contactable. Communication is the key to the whole dispute prevention. If there's good communication with their landlords and the tenants, we do see that only 1 to 2% end in dispute. So it shows that the majority of landlord and tenants relationship is good working relationships. And it is solely based on communication. I was speaking to a lady there last weekend, and she was an auctioneer, and she said that she has never had an issue with her tenant, but she said she believes that's down to that she rings them up to see if they're okay, she does her inspections from time to time, and she calls around with a gift on Christmas. And she said it's stuff like that she believes that if more people did that, I'm not suggesting we all do that, but this is what she said. Okay, so the golden rule for in respect of the PRTB is that we act in accordance with the law, that tenants pay their rent even if in dispute. You have to see, by tenants not paying their rents, it's probably not encouraging people to come into the market because they're in fear. Oh God, what if they don't pay their rent? We all have to work together in regards to solving this problem. Return deposits promptly. If the tenant has paid their rent, has not damaged the property, has paid their bills, has not left early, then return their deposits promptly. People look and say, right, we're owed rent arrears, but the opposite side of that coin as well is that we're owed our deposit, and it might actually prevent homelessness. So we would say, pay your rent and return deposits promptly. The final thing is, don't take the law into your own hands. So many times I've had to take calls from people where they've been illegally evicted, or somebody has gone in and carried out an inspection without their permission. These can be seen as serious things, not just in what I'm saying. You could potentially put yourself in a situation where you are walking in, if you were to legally evict somebody, and you're walking in on a child in a bath, where you will actually potentially have the guards out on you for a criminal act, even though you think you are doing the right thing. So it is important to not take the law into your own hands. We have seen from research that with regards to references, 50% of tenants were asked for references. So if only 50% were asked, then we have to see, well, why wasn't the rest asked? This, like I said, is your most valuable asset. We need to be getting references. We need to be ensuring that we're getting in the 99% of good landlord, good tenants. That's what we need to be ensuring. Inventories carried out. 24% carried out an inventory. and 32% was not. And inspections, over 40%, there was no inspections carried out. If you don't carry out inspections periodically, then you could be leaving yourself open to the property being damaged, huge damages. So it's important that you do carry out these routine inspections. It is also important that that you make sure that you request an inspection at a mutually acceptable time. You cannot go in and just decide, right, they didn't agree to the inspection, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to inspect myself. Like I said, you could be walking in on top of anything. So, if the tenant is continuously refusing access to the property, they are in breach of their obligations. We would say, like at the start, if you set out to the tenant and said, look, I'm hoping to inspect maybe every 2 months or every 3 months, and then it's clear from the start, this is a professional relationship, this is the way things are going to be, so that there isn't this 3 months down the tenant is saying, no, I don't want you to inspect. If they continuously refused, you can serve a notice of termination on them, but they must be given an opportunity to mend their hand first. The stages of the process then, with regard to inspections, I always do give the comparison of a guard in that they have to get a warrant to go in and search somebody's property. So if a guard needs a warrant, that means that the Constitution protects a person's right to privacy more than anything else. So it is so important not to go in and inspect yourself. Okay. Stages of the dispute resolution process. I have them on with me in a second. The telephone mediation, I'm just going to run through that with you about the success of that. We have had 75% of agreements were reached at adjudication or at mediation. And with regards to that, there's also 92% satisfaction rate with the mediation. With the stages of the dispute process, just quickly, there is either mediation or adjudication at the start. A lot of people think it's mediation and adjudication. It's not. It's mediation or adjudication. And if you wish to appeal the decision, then it's an appeal to a tribunal. After the tribunal, it's an appeal on a point of law. So what is the advantages of mediation? And I'm running through this because I see the time. The advantages of mediation, first and foremost, is it's free, and everybody likes free things. Again, it's based on understanding, and it's based on positions versus interests. And to explain what positions versus interests is, I saw a very good explanation on the website, in which it said that if there was 2 sisters fighting over an orange, and each sister wants the entire orange, and anything less is impossible. And a very wise parent, I doubt it would have been my parent, asked each of the orange would have been just taken off us, and that would have been it. The wise parent asks each of the girls why she wants the orange. One explains she wants to drink the juice, and the other one explains that she wants the rind to do some cooking. What each sister wants is her position. She wants the orange. But what the mother does is mediation. She figures out what do they really want, what is their interest versus what is their position. Their position is the orange, nothing less. Their interest is the juice or the rind. So by that, she's able to solve the problem. And that's what mediation is about. And that's what people forget. We actually go through mediation in life all the time. Like Northern Ireland was solved by mediation. It was solved by talking about it. And I think if Northern Ireland can be solved by mediation, I think each of us could look at it as a potential possibility. Oh, sorry, I kind of went forward there without explaining what my... The other thing about mediation is it reduces stress. We do see, we'll say with regard to notices of termination that we see there, it is a bit of a missed opportunity we see for mediation, in that a lot of the time when people actually go for the mediation, landlords don't want to serve the notice of termination. It's just that the tenant has annoyed them by saying something. And the tenant is annoyed because the landlord hasn't fixed the cooker. So when you go to mediation, they actually, a lot of the time, withdraw the notice of termination and say, look, this is the situation. So it is a bit of a missed opportunity. With regard to rent arrears, we see a lot of the time, the problem is affordability. So the landlord can withdraw the notice and say, well, look, I could push out that they can pay me back X amount. With mediation, a lot of parties comply with the orders when they get the orders. They reach agreements and they comply with them. And that's the difference with adjudication. A lot of the time, a decision has been made. One person is right, one person is wrong. And one person isn't happy at adjudication. Usually with mediation, both people are happy. It does lead to more compliance, like I said, and it does lead to a healthier relationship. And even though the relationship might be ended, broken down, etc., it's looking with empathy and understanding from both sides of the coin. And that's what makes it successful. Evidence, just very quickly, if you're coming to adjudication, you need your evidence. If it's a deposit retention and you've retained a deposit, you need to show evidence as to why you've retained the deposit, the damages. If it's rent arrears you're coming to, you need to show the rent arrears. So it is based on evidence rather than mediation. Mediation is based on, talk me through it. Okay, the breakdown of cases, the majority of cases we have is rent arrears and overholding at 32%. What we have done there is we have fast-tracked any rent arrears or overholding cases so that they go through the system as quick as possible, because it is seen as a major issue out there. Okay, feedback from mediators then. Basically what they're saying is that a lot of tenants don't read leases, that you're signing something and having not read it, that maybe they're not even given the lease, they're told to sign a piece of paper. You need to ensure that if you're signing a contract, you read it and make sure you understand it. Poor communication, like I said. Lack of knowledge. A lot of people don't understand what is their rights and obligations, and that's one thing we are going to look at and see if we can resolve. We are sending out the Good Landlord Tenants Guides with them. It's important that tenants and landlords, like I said, discuss it so that they're clear, look, this is what my rights are and this is what my obligations are, so that both parties are clear. Show flexibility. And that's with regard to repairs. If repairs are to be carried out, carry them out promptly. Like that can lead down the road to the tenant saying, I'm not going to pay the rent because he hasn't repaired the cooker. So it's important that you talk to each other. And the one thing I've seen from all the adjudicators, and it is really the key, it's common sense. And people just have to use that common sense when they're looking at the dispute. Okay, the contact details of the PRTB. I'll give Catherine Ward's direct line now straight off. If you do have any queries, we do have a helpline that you can call. They do give information on your rights and obligations, and that number is 0818 30 30 37. I also have a list of email addresses that you can contact with regard to that. Actually, one other thing, I forgot, we have booklets down there that we have produced. This is the taking your own enforcement, that sometimes we can't take every enforcement. So we have drafted up a guide with Eversheds, a straightforward step-by-step process of how you would take your own enforcement. They have copies of affidavits, etc. And it's not that we want you to take your own enforcement and give this to a solicitor. We want you to take your own enforcement and take it yourself. So that's what we're promoting in this guide. This guide is for parties if you are going to dispute resolution. We have them on our website, and they're also at the bottom of the room, each of these, and that's on the dispute services and how they work. And the final guide is the Good Landlord Tenant Guide that I'm hoping all of you are fairly familiar with. And I think that's me. Thanks.